Hi, and welcome to the Fluid Voice. I am Ozma the Dark, she, they pronouns, here on this wondrous and glorious day, and I don't know why I'm calling it wondrous or glorious, outside of the fact that it's 4 days from Hanukkah. Anyways, Christy, how are you doing?
Hi, Christy, Abbey. She, her. Sorry, I went non-binary for a second. She, her, and I'm doing okay, I think. Yeah, family.
And how about you, Perfect? I don't know why my brain died there for a second.
Perfect, and I use he, him pronouns. And I think you're right about it. Day is going wonderfully.
And finally, our special guest tonight, Godless Cranium. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty great. Thanks for having me on. He, him for me.
Okay, and tonight we are talking about fucking fascism. And I just wanted to put the fucking part in there, honestly. It's about fascism. So,
alliteration.
Yeah, I guess to start things off, in general, what do you consider to be fascist? When it comes to, in terms of, what do you think fascism is?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking anyone. Anyone,
okay.
Anyone can pop up first. It'd be nice if we all just get a turn for starting off with the general first thoughts.
Well, I would say that you have to have a dictatorial leader, or one that wants to be a dictatorial leader, would be the first thing.
Yeah, that's in all the definitions. I think that is one of the ones that's listed in everybody's set of requirements.
Yeah, and it's usually something that is usually there's an element of, or a very large element of racism. Usually somebody is trying to stoke fear in the middle class towards some minority group, so that they're the issue, they're the one that they're not getting money. Like we were talking before the pre-show, some people kind of say that it's a breakdown of capitalism, or a response towards a growing socialist movement within a country. You also have mythologizing of the nation, especially in the past, I think is another key element that you have there. Make America Great Again, for example. Because there was never a time in America where it was greater than it is now, really. I mean,
that also would meet the requirement for being the historic reverence.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it's a yeah, you're exactly right. It's like a reverence for the past, or reverence the way things used to be done. There's quite a few, it's kind of it's a tricky thing to kind of nail down. Like when I was doing research for my videos, I ran across multiple different definitions for fascism. Usually it's just broken down into what are some common elements within all of them. Those are very strong elements within all fascist movements. But you'd also have ones that are there for like machismo, for example, and glorifying of violence. You can have that to differing degrees, right? Like it doesn't have to be always the main thing, but it's there. Like you see that a lot right now, like Trump bragging about having somebody assassinated by the marshals, for example. Is machismo and weaponry, contempt for the weak, those kinds of things. I think you find those in Umberto Echo's thing is he has a list of them, like fear of difference and stuff like that. So you see a lot of like honestly, like almost all of them, if you look through any of the definitions, I don't know how you can come away thinking that Trump isn't a fascist, because almost every one, there might be one that you'd be like, oh, I'm not sure if that one kind of fits, but like if there's 14 or 15 different things, he'd fit at least 12, right? Like like easily fit 12 that you can, like, off the top of your head, you go, oh yeah, he did that. So that's
I mean, he came after the trans people pretty hard, which was unexpected, sort of. Sort of.
Yeah, I don't know about unexpected.
Yeah, like I think anybody that was like paying attention at the time could have guessed that he was going to go that way.
I mean, it's hard because the racism was more obvious.
One of the things I went back. Sorry.
Racism isn't always part of fascism. Othering, the blameful othering.
Yeah,
that there's something that you can blame that is the cause of the woes, and that those are the others.
Yeah,
that's an important part of it.
Anyway. Yeah, that's exactly right. So like a lot of the fascist movements, they might go say like, you know, the Nazis were the Jews, but obviously there was other groups that were also targeted, right? Not just Jews, not just the racist element, but they killed disabled people and anything like that, which is another, which kind of incorporates the hatred of the weak, right? Or what they deem as weak. I'm not saying obviously that disabled people are weak, but that's how a Nazi would categorize them, right?
Christy, you're gonna say something.
Oh no, I went back and looked at Trump's acceptance speech from the convention, and while he was pretty careful the way he phrased it, while it appeared to be pro-LGBT, it was actually anti-Muslim. The thing he said, I'll protect the LGBTQ, from hateful foreign ideologies.
Missing the T.
Yeah, and when Tiffany did it, she just left the T out entirely. So.
But yeah, I would say that nationalism always, extreme nationalism is one of the things that definitely is portrayed a lot, although not necessarily required. Not necessarily. You can be heavily nationalistic and not fascist. I would say potentially not a fascist, but the general putting of a country over the people who live in it, at the very least to an extreme degree, tends to be an element of most fascist movements that I'm aware of.
That's super important right there. Is that like I said, like all fascism, if you have all of you could have one, like you said, like nationalism, for example. If you're a nationalist, that doesn't necessarily mean you're a fascist, but it's just one piece of the puzzle, right? And when you have a bunch of the pieces, that's when you have fascism. And it's usually it takes root in countries that are experiencing difficulty, because that's like the United States right now, or like the rest of the world, actually, the entire world. So
yeah,
Bolsonaro, for instance, wants to be a mini Trump, but he's not a fascist. I mean, he's awful, and horrible, and has to go, but I don't see him as fascist.
I was just gonna say that, just to be clear, just because someone has nationalist in their title doesn't mean they're nationalistic in the sense of, or they're not. Doesn't mean that they're extremely nationalistic. And in that, I mean, they're historically there've been the Irish nationalists, where the whole point was, yeah, you can love being in Ireland, but That's just because that happens to be the place that you live, and not because it's the there's nothing better about it as a country than other countries. It was basically an attempt to try to break that sort of putting of the country above the people. But yeah, generally,
yeah. They call it intense or ultra nationalism. I hear a lot used in terms of trying to describe fascism.
Yeah.
Intense or ultra nationalism as opposed to just nationalism, which I don't think that really helps people a whole lot in understanding the difference. But
yeah, and that is also the weird thing when it comes to this stuff, because then you start being like, oh, you're calling everyone a fascist, or it is a talking point that generally gets used, or was a fascist really? But there are genuine elements of fascism that are agreed on by just about everyone.
Yeah.
It's just about whether or not they need all the elements, or just most of the elements.
Well, yeah, well, that's the thing, is that like fascism kind of molds itself to the area that it's in, right? So American fascism will look different than Germany fascism will look different than Italy fascism. They just have, like you said, they have common elements between them that you can kind of stick out or you can kind of pick them out. So, and that also takes time, right? Because most of the time leaders are trying to hold their cards to their vest, right? They don't want to just come out and be super racist, for example, which conservatives have been in the United States anyways has been flirting with that for a long time, right? Where they do the racism, but they do it in such a way that they can have plausible deniability, where Trump just kind of came along and kind of blew that into the water by just being blatantly racist, right?
Well, he dog whistled so hard it became a whistle that everyone could hear.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, I take that back. Not everyone can hear, and you don't know why not everyone can hear it, because it's really obvious to most people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, either they're not paying attention or they don't want to hear it, right?
There's also the control of information, which is usually coupled with a propaganda program, which, I mean, Trump has a propaganda program with the education program where he wants to start teaching only the good parts about America.
Yeah. Well, like Emily Chambers says in the chat, actually, anyone who fails to assimilate in public is a threat. So that would be under the same sort of thing. That's definitely true as well. That and you see that with Trump, right? Like, well, he's trying to like find like Antifa, and he doesn't actually explain what Antifa is. He's just like, anyone that they point to and say that's Antifa, they want to be able to throw into prison, right? So that's the first, like, one of the first steps he was trying to take, right? So
and one of the points,
50 Antifa on the plane was one of the weirder things he ever said. So,
but the thing is that, okay, there are good people on all sides. There are bad people on all sides. But the thing is that the left is very into cleaning up their own yard. So the thing is that the left readily admits, yeah, we've got some people who have done some horrible things who are on the left. They participated in riots that were unnecessary violence and so on. They think that that's bad and that they decry it. But then the white nationalists use that to be saying it's everybody's at fault. That no one's at fault. No one's to blame because everyone's at fault.
I mean, yeah,
so,
but I mean, also they
well, that's what he's saying when he says Antifa's to blame. He's saying that an unknown, there are those who are out there on the left who are to blame. There's a secret cabal of lefties who are to blame, and we need to root them out.
Yeah, but he also like does that with like he calls Biden a socialist, right? Like,
Yeah.
for example, like he just
Yeah.
wants anybody that he disagrees with, social like politically, he will just name. If he had the power, he would just say, well, they're Antifa, right? Like that's if you think that Biden is in any way a socialist or a communist, is unbelievable.
Well,
I don't know how you do that, right? But
Yeah. I
a
mean,
linchpin of fascism is anti-communism.
yeah,
That's
exactly.
also one of them.
Yep. Yeah, or
What was his reaction to Biden saying Antifa is an idea, not a group? Was particularly it threw Trump because he wanted to rail against it some more, and it was like, what? Because it's like he didn't even consider that as a possibility.
well, when you start talking about words as just as just generalizations and not as actual things, then you can always be like use Antifa or Black Lives Matter as a shortcut for these are the bad people. So anyone you consider bad people, they're Black Lives Matter and Antifa, and any people you consider good people, well, that's our people. Because we're against bad people doing bad things.
well, but he'll also use that same thing towards prior allies, right? Like anybody that goes against him, he'll just throw them under the bus, right? Like
He just threw William Barr under the bus, for God's sakes.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, like he goes no Fs.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's partially because so when it comes to fascism and when it comes to a lot of elements, I see fascism as potentially a natural continuation of, or a natural extrapolation of what happens when people with particular abusive personalities happen to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And the tactics used, the way that the lies are used, the way that they try to get people to build them up. Well, they build themselves up, and then they praise people who agree with them and shit on people who disagree with them. The way that they use other people to attack others. Like, Trump doesn't attack anyone directly. Trump does the same thing abusers do, and he implies that these people are bad and have done bad things and should be stopped or attacked, regardless of what they've actually done. And then other people can do it, and then he could say, I didn't do anything. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if he built it up. He can just step away, and that is something abusers do. They are like, you know what? Someone should do this. Not me, but someone else, because I think I might come off too mean or something. I think one of you should bring up, like, all these things.
In the pre-show, I said one of the things with Trump is that he's so bad at it, but he does have a certain native genius for stoking, which, if he was any better at it, would have been even more dangerous than it wound up being. And I'm not minimizing how awful he was as a president, or how 250,000 people could be alive now. That would be,
Well, I think we're actually ahead of the game here. Inside 20 minutes, and we seem to all have ironed out which sort of fascism we're talking about, because there's a dozen different fascisms we could be talking about.
Sure.
Yeah, and Trump's basically a con man, right? Like that's
Oh.
his that's what he's genius at, or if you want to call that a genius. So I have a hard time saying genius in relation to Trump at anything, but he's if I could say that he's a genius at anything, it would probably be branding. Somehow he's convinced the rest of the world that he is a billionaire that is great at business despite having 6 bankruptcies, being massively in debt. That's what he's genius at.
He's really excellent at basically the 3-card Monty. He does misdirection.
Yeah.
He does something splashy, and you have to watch what he's doing besides that, because there's something else going on. The reason he's doing that, the reason he's saying that Mexicans are rapists, is because he's doing something else somewhere else.
That's very true. And it's not like we've known since the 80s that Trump was a bad person, right? Like we didn't know to the extent of how bad, but most people kind of knew. I watched a video earlier today where I can't remember who did it, but I think it was Shody or whatever. Anyways, they did a video on how Trump is like the bad guy in every, like he's the villain in every movie. And I'm watching that, like, yeah, and he said something like that in the video, like, we've known for like ever that Trump's a bad person, and yet we voted him in, right? Like,
well,
there's a particular movie villain though that he reminds me of, and I don't know how obscure this movie is. So, A Face in the Crowd, starring Andy Griffith from.
Oh yeah,
mid-50s.
I know the movie.
Oh, I haven't seen that one. I always think of Biff. I always think of Biff in Back to the Future.
Yeah, and well, he was specifically modeled on Trump, so.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
He was modeled on Trump, but also, like he points out in the thing, King Koopa, living in Koopa Towers, and so on. Everybody is modeled on Trump. Trump's the bad guy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean, what do you think is the thing that people find comfort in when it comes to fascism? Because obviously there are a number of people who voted for Trump, far too many, I would say. But is it just do you think it's just the simplicity, or is there something else?
Well, I think there's 2 elements that are part of fascism: direct action and a call to direct action.
Yeah.
They say we have a direct line. We can fix this problem. Whatever the problems are, we have the key to fixing it. It's these direct actions, and we call on you to participate and be part of the solution.
Yeah, I think the third biggest thing would be fear, which kind of ties those 2 things together, right? Because it doesn't work if people aren't afraid of that thing, right? So like people are afraid because they're wages have stagnated, they don't have money in the bank for an emergency. I think it's like 50%. I think it's 50% of Americans don't have $400 in the bank in case there's an emergency. Then COVID on top of that, so you have we haven't seen this kind of economic devastation since the Great Depression, and so the Trump finds scapegoats, and that's what he's done, right? Like at first it was Mexicans, we got to build a wall, they're all rapists, and then it just goes through. He'll just use whatever group he can, and say that he'll protect everybody from this group, right? But it's also like a big chunk of that has to do with capitalism, right? Like how did like historians long into the future are going to be studying what happened during COVID, right? Like how did the world's most richest nation fail this badly? Like how did that happen? And the answer to that, a lot of it is capitalism, the way it's practiced in the United States, and everywhere else. I mean, Canada, for example, like I live in Canada, and we're probably in about the middle of the pack of how we did it. But we did a lot more than the States. But I mean, right now, for example, in Ontario, the numbers are going up. We've broken records, and the government still is scared to like shut down areas because it's economically it's bad, right? So and so they don't, instead of like doing what we need to do to protect the people, we're doing what we need to do to protect the economy. And that's, to me, ass backwards, right? It should be the other way around, because the people are the economy on top of that, right? So
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you were talking about the worker dissatisfaction and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I watched like a 58-minute TED Talk sort of thing by an economist on that, and now I'm an expert. They were talking about the fact that it was that since the mid 70s, we've been setting up the tax structure so that the cost of living increase was being paid instead to the top 5% of the richest 5% were getting all of that money. And it hasn't been going towards the cost of living increase. Just everybody's been getting steadily poorer.
Yeah, like I did a video, I think it was about a year ago, before COVID. It was before COVID, talking about income inequality and like where it is in the world. And I wasn't just focused on the States or Canada or whatever, but the States' inequality at that time, and that was before Trump's tax cuts and COVID and all that stuff, was like equal to countries that were rioting because of inequality and like something like the rise of gas prices by a couple of cents could start a riot because people just didn't have the money to do it, right? And so that's how bad the inequality was, and US is like right behind them, like right there. So
we're also conditioned to accept capitalism as a necessity. Capital. I still have my what is capitalism coloring books from grade school in 1970s.
Yeah. And
I think that's true, but I think you're starting to see cracks, right? Like you're starting to see the weakness in that position. Like you're starting to see also like people like AOC and Bernie Sanders, like the conversations that they're having right now, you couldn't have had 30 years ago, right?
No, I got beaten up for being a dirty commie.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and when it comes to I mean, at the very least, I live in St. Paul. So protests are still going on when it comes to Black Lives Matter and a lot of stuff. I was just going to the grocery store. I live in like practically I just live in an apartment in a place that's practically suburban in St. Paul. Going to a pharmacy just to pick up stuff, and I passed by a protest where they're saying racists should be afraid, which I kind of agree with. But also, police shot a thing of tear gas as well in the general direction. I walked around the tear gas, but like as best I could. But you know, that was like yesterday. Yesterday was an interesting day, a surprisingly interesting day. I'm sad that I didn't get take pictures. I know they took pictures of the fact that tear gas was tossed in a protest, but people are upset. And maybe it's also just that I've seen some of the biggest protests here in St. Paul and Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And I mean, ICE protests are still going on in a lot of places.
Well, I mean, in Poland, they're being led by the Women's March, huge marches there. In India, they're having a general strike with 250 million workers. I mean, that's like what, 2/3 of the American population. And we barely hear about it. I was thinking of making a video about it, so I've been trying to find information on it, but it's pretty slim pickings.
That's one of those things I was trying the same thing. I was like, I should actually talk about this because I know a little bit about it, but
you have to watch PBS NewsHour.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? Is like it's being reported on a lot of like communist kind of websites and stuff like that. But it's hard to find something that like you can cross-reference and like make sure that it's accurate. Because obviously they're going to be operating under a bias too. So I try to do that, but there's like no mainstream media places I can find except for maybe Vox. I think had one article.
The I don't know if this counts as mainstream, but did Democracy Now! Do something about it?
Yeah, I think Democracy Now.
Because Democracy Now! Has been pretty good about stuff for a long time. I mean, they definitely have been good about showing protests and police brutality since. Well,
I think they did talk about it. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, so as long as I was a kid. Look, this is what happens when you get raised by socialist parents or whatever. You end up watching Democracy Now! Since you're a kid.
Well, they did talk about it, I think, but the thing is that like the nuts and bolts of what they're doing isn't really discussed. So I don't think they know either. You know what I mean? Like they know like some of the like. They know that like the farmers, for example, are a big part of it, but they don't know about what exactly the policy things that they're going against and which groups are part of that protest. I think I found out that like all of the unions in India were taking part except for one, which was one that's affiliated with Modi. So that would make sense. But yeah, like there's movements around like the entire world, right? Like even in Canada, for example, we have BLM marches sometimes. I think like the way they handled COVID really kind of put a damper on that, because like when at the beginning of COVID, we were starting to see more demonstrations, but then the government rolled out CERB, which is a Canadian emergency benefit, which was $2,000 a month if you were laid off or something, and that kind of put an end to that, right? Because people were like, well, good, well, at least we're not going to lose our houses and stuff, right? So
yeah,
we got $1,200
once.
Yeah, once, right?
Yeah, so back to fascism. So how do you like I feel like there's a lot of aspects of fascism that are just so ingrained in society that seems insurmountable to get people out of that. But it would be difficult to make any sort of reasonable change without getting people out of that. So it's I mean, I don't necessarily know all of what to do outside of just speaking out, because that is something. But yeah.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
No.
It's just a collection of slightly less desirable traits. Nationalism is a fairly decent thing, but extreme nationalism is where your country is better just because it's your country, not because of reasons, is basically the idea. And you go, when you've stepped outside of that sort of thing, and you've taken it to an extreme where it's become undesirable. And if you collect enough of them together, you start to get really horrible.
I'm not a fan of nationalism on any level, really. I mean, like,
yeah, same.
It's kind of weird. It seems kind of weird to be like, I had nothing to do with being born in Canada, for example. I mean, I might brag up something that our government did or something, but I mean, really, I don't have a lot to do with that. And we've done a lot of shitty things as a country. So,
well,
I don't know.
I mean, in terms of describing the culture I grew up with, American is a good way to describe an aspect of that. But outside of that, I'm not quite sure.
Well, I feel like America has already had extreme nationalism, right? Like American exceptionalism is kind of known. A lot of Americans don't know much about anything around outside of America. So I think that's already was a thing before Trump. Trump just kind of put his foot on the accelerator, basically.
Well, why would you need to know about anything other than America? We did everything first and best.
Exactly, right? But like, I think the thing, like, if you want to get people away from it, I think you've got to like kind of make regular conservatives realize that they're falling into helping fascists. I think that's probably the key, because a lot of the traits, like you kind of said about nationalism, are like, historically like conservative ideals, right? Like, and you can see it in, like, I was gonna make a video about this actually. I should probably do that. But it was like, if you take like the SJW movement, for example, which started out kind of like a conservative movement, right? But if you
Are you
go
talking
through
about the anti-SJW movement?
anti-SJW, sorry. If you go through like Umberto's 14 things, and you go through them one by one, a lot of them would apply to the anti-SJW movement, right? Like fear of minorities or whatever, like women and minorities. You see that all over, right? It's like anti-feminism, all that kind of stuff. So nationalism is in there. Mythologizing the past, like conservatism is basically conserve things that you did before, right? So a lot of those things, so they have enough similarities that they decide that they're going to side with the fascists because they think they can control them against the left, right? Or the left political movement, which is what you saw in America. That's what was going on, right? And they won, but they thankfully didn't win a second time, because I think if they would have won this election, we'd be, saying goodbye to American democracy. So
Yeah, I think you're right.
At least for
It
time.
was a very close shave there, but
it's still kind of circling the drain. I mean, to be honest, because I mean, like, a lot of people argue that Obama, for example, kind of set up Trump, right? Like, he preached like hope and change, and that's why people voted for him. And then he didn't bring any change; he just brought the same old. And so when Trump came along, a lot of people argue that then they voted for Trump because he would change things by doing the opposite of what Obama was going to do, or said he was going to do, and be like blow the system up kind of deal, right? And so like now you have Biden, who's going to do basically what Obama did. I think, anyways. I might be wrong.
That also
think...
depends a lot on the upcoming runoffs in Georgia.
But... Yeah, that's true.
Well, I was gonna say Biden is only gonna do as much. I mean, that's probably gonna be the default. He's gonna do things similar to Obama. But that said, there are certain things that I think. I mean, there are a few differences. I think things will. Some of the social aspects will progress under Biden. But that being said, I don't think it's going to fix. I don't think Biden's going to do anything to fix the more institutional problems, unless enough people protest and fight for it and make it as abundantly clear that they will accept it as possible.
I guess what I mean is, like, he's going to probably do, unless, like you said, like, unless he's pushed towards it in some significant way, he's going to probably deliver the status quo, right? Like the same thing that you've been getting year after year after year under the
I mean, not the same, not the exact same thing, but like the general democratic movement, which is a slow social shift without any economic changes.
Right.
I have made no secret. I predict that from the Biden presidency, you will get exactly the Democratic ticket. Whatever the Democratic Party is saying is the way to go. He will follow that exactly as a blueprint, and then he will pick one or two things that will be his thing to do that are divergent from that. And those he'll focus on, because that's what he's done every step of his career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, we've talked about this before on this show a lot, which is in a way the fact that people's rights in general are a big thing to him, but LGBTQ especially.
Yeah, because I don't think he's going to do anything about I don't know. I don't have any reason at the moment to think that he's going to do anything about the ICE camps. Or at the very least, not anything significant.
I don't know. He was to the left of Obama, so it's
he might undo some of the damage that Trump has instituted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean that's something you can say for, you can undo some damage of police, but there needs to be like a really big change to cause anything good to happen with the police, and I think that requires a bit more pushing. That said, I consider Biden a lesser of two evils because it's fuckloads easier to protest when you're not inside a concentration camp.
Yeah. Well,
And-
yeah, I don't think anybody here would argue. I don't know for sure, but I know I would never argue that Biden is worse evil than Trump. I mean, they're not even on the same playing field.
Well,
but...
yeah, I just like to make it clear, because obviously when it comes to things, I care about what might actually, what elements of things might actually cause change, and there are some people who are just like, it doesn't matter, they're both bad, because they're both going to maintain some version of the economic system currently in place. And it's like,
the Susan Sarandon argument.
I think Alex is arguing with the voices which you hear all too often on these things. You think Biden is good? You think he'll save everything? You think Biden is your savior?
no.
No.
But he's not a fucking fascist.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
Well,
I am on too many aspects. I have been to protests. I am Jewish. I am trans. I have no desire to have children or serve as a part of the general military-industrial complex. Those are 5 reasons for me to be put in a camp. So, I think I don't like how many things how many checklists I check off. I mean, my parents have been to lots of protests as well, and
well, that's enough to get you right there.
yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, the political distance is one thing. Trans, any part of the LGBTQ, born and raised Jewish, like, there are a lot of
You're part
things
of the gay agenda, aren't you?
Yeah, it's
Yeah, I've talked with an awful lot of Trump supporters who really genuinely feel that he was the messianic savior, that he was the key to the salvation of America, that he in particular, that it was very messianic, and that they're being deprived of their savior.
Yeah. I think the other thing about like American politics is how closely tied. I mean, anytime you have capitalism, you kind of have the people with money obviously are going to have more influence on the politicians. But I think it's like exacerbated in American politics. Like there's the politicians aren't really doing what the people want. They're doing what their donors are telling them to do. And that's a real problem as well, right? Like that's beyond Trump and Biden, but it sets up some of the aspects that you need to kind of bring in fascism, right? So,
well, yeah, and
oh, sorry, just because like a lot of times fascism is married between industry and government, right? Like they've merged kind of thing. So I just wanted to make that so that for that point.
See, we've pushed these things to be careers. You become a congressman and it's part of your career in politics, instead of being where it really should be, which is it's part of your giving back. It's part of your public service. And you go in and you do 4 years and you can be done. Because the whole thing is you go, well, once I've gotten there, I have to do what the money says. I have to do that because otherwise I can't get reelected. Well, and all it takes is somebody who goes, yeah, I'm not going to get reelected.
Well, I mean, that's
solved.
I mean, that's why you have some of the political elements of anarchy being about not having rulers, which, while there are aspects of those ideas that were floated in the democratic system, at least in writing in a few areas, it hasn't actually played out, partially because of the winner-take-all system, partially because it's America was founded on a culture. It was an extrapolation of British culture at the time, which still had a king.
And British arrogance. I mean, let's face it, the Anglophone countries are not exactly known for their diffidence.
Well, yeah, but like,
Canada's not actually even the exception. I mean, New Zealand maybe.
Canada does a lot. Like, that's one thing that I brought up on Twitter several times, is that like a lot of times people give Canada a free pass. They're like, oh, they're just nice people or whatever. There's an element of that, but there's a lot of racism in Canada. That
wait. Are you saying that there's something racist about the Nazi memorial that's protected by the Canadian government in
yes.
What was that, near Ontario? Oh fuck, I forget where that is.
Yeah, I read about that too. Yeah, exactly. But a lot of it is turned towards the Indigenous people. They really take it on the head here.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of the same themes that you see in America, like how the police there were kind of modeled and took in slave catchers. Well, the RCMP was formed to keep Indigenous people on the reserves and to take away land if they needed to give it to white people. So it's like a lot of the same. There's a lot of similarities between the two, and that still runs today, where the RCMP is a symbol of Canada. Like, if you think of Canada, a lot of people think of the guy with the red coat on his horse or whatever. Well, that symbol, that symbol is like that. That is the RCMP is incredibly corrupt. So it's terrible.
So are you telling me that all those Mountie Canadian television shows that I have seen way too many of because of one of my sisters, are you saying that that's not how things are in Canada?
That's definitely not how things are. And also women in the RCMP. If you ever get time, do a little research on that, and you'll see how badly that they're treated. I mean, some of them have been treated so badly that they got PTSD and are now going to, retired and going to therapy for it. So it's brutal, the RCMP.
That is strangely enough one thing I have looked into. Yeah. I have ideas of things I want to talk about or write essays about, and I hear about stuff like that, and I went, oh, okay, let's look at that, and it's bad.
It's really bad.
It's
okay.
This is a case where it is worse than in the American, well, Northwest at least. Because policewomen in the South forget it, but Southeast.
Well, I think they more closely resemble the way women are treated in the American Armed Forces. Would be like more of a parallel, because the RCMP started out as like a military outfit, right? So it's carried that kind of tradition on through the ages, and so.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense. Because in the military it's like women can't be in most of special forces outside of rare testing exceptions or whatever, or at the very least that was the case through most of the time when I was growing up. checked recently, but
Not
that
we
said,
need
it,
military stuff.
I'm enjoying the intellectual exercise of matching the Trump presidency to fascism. This is not like matching Star Trek to, whatever. This is, I think this is it's real fascism.
yeah.
And I think it's just, these are things that are actually, but there's things like imperialism, which I'm just going, does really his behavior towards Puerto Rico count as imperialism? Does his trying to purchase Greenland count as imperialism? And I forget what he was trying to trade Puerto Rico for. He literally was trying to trade Puerto Rico for something.
He also said that we should just, or not we, because I'm not American, but American people should just take oil from, I think it was Iran, for like the trouble that they caused us or something like that. So
yeah, that was
that would definitely be imperialism.
Yeah, the Puerto Rico thing was to try to get to a place to kick out people in ICE camps.
Oh, making Mexico
to deport them to Puerto Rico, I think.
Possibly. He literally was trying to trade Puerto Rico and its residents to somebody for another island. I don't even remember. And you're like, what? He just had them explore the option.
Yeah, he thinks he's like playing Risk or something, right?
I'm gonna say.
So, out of curiosity, what's an element of fascist thinking that you think that that would be the easiest to break through, to just try to, because some of these elements I get the impression that sometimes it's like takes away a linchpin and then like all the fascist elements fall apart for some people. I don't know if you had any thoughts about what might be the easiest aspect that can be tackled.
I think it would depend on where the fascism is taking place, because it would go by the culture of that country, right? Like, so like in America, maybe the disagreement is treason. I mean, you could maybe say that because America for a long time has had like a free speech thing is like encoded in their constitution, and a lot of Americans believe in it strongly and stuff. So you could say that maybe that goes against that, so it'd be easier to convince Americans about that. But it might be different in a different country, right? Like in in a country that might have hate speech laws, they would have less of that and more of something else, right? So
I will say that the free speech thing is difficult because I feel, and maybe this is true for other areas of fascism as well, that gets used to try to say it's fine to promote fascism and stuff like that, and if you're talking against it, then you're the one attacking free speech, not me.
You go popper on that one.
I think the best way is to like improve the economic conditions and material conditions of the citizens, right? Because if all the citizens, or most of the citizens live a comfortable lifestyle and are able to make ends meet and have a little bit of money put away, they're probably not going to be turning to fascism, right? Like fascism usually happens in countries where you have extreme inequality and people are afraid, right? So if you take away that fear, then you don't have fascism.
Mostly.
Okay. I mean, like fascism, there's the hero worship of the leaders. I would say that's a vulnerable point because leaders, everybody's a heel. Okay, it's viewed in the correct light. So
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln wanted to kick everyone who wasn't white essentially to I forget like
French Guiana.
French Guiana or South Africa or Liberia. I know it's a country in Africa.
Liberia.
Yeah, French Guiana or Liberia.
Move them
like
there. Yeah.
and despite that, he is the most we're only taught about the good aspects of Abraham Lincoln, and let him be put on a pedestal instead of teaching about the person he really was, which was a flawed human being.
Yes.
Who may or may not have been trying to do what he thought was best.
Well, I mean, he wrote about it. He was talking about how it was the great stain on the nation, and that there was no solution. There was no solution that he could see working out in generations ahead where you would ever make this work out. So he was just going, people are going to have to live separate because there's just no way you can make this work out from where we're at.
Yeah, essentially advocating for segregation.
Extreme segregation.
Well, yes.
And as well as his solution of segregation was not, well, we're going to have to, draw a line at the Mississippi and give one side each or anything like that. He was like, well, just you guys get out. So that's, but we'll bear the cost of buying you a country.
Having experience when I was young, my mother being, when we lived in the South briefly, my mother being turned away at bathrooms, even though the Civil Rights Act was, 5 or 6 years old then.
Yeah.
As was I. I'm a month younger than the enactment of the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah, we don't do that here.
Being because my mother looks black, and when we came back to New York, she insisted on straightening her hair. Well, you've seen various people have seen my mom, but she looks either Spanish or black, and we're both, so but yeah, she used to be considered a danger to the white women in bathrooms, which is not an argument. Thankfully, that's an argument no one's ever used again for any other reason.
Yeah. There's no argument about bathrooms anymore.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's legal for trans women to use the women's bathroom in the UK, but there are plenty of people who are trying to turn away trans women from women's bathrooms in the UK.
Oh, I didn't know that you were in the UK. Are you in the UK?
No, I'm not. I just know. I just hear about that shit all the time in the UK. I hear about UK shit a bunch from trans Twitter or Sophia.
Oh, okay. It's just funny because I was saying to my fiance and I were having a conversation the other day, and I said it always seems like whenever I'm reading an article about like anti-trans crap, it's usually American or UK. A lot of times it's the UK, like even more than America.
Yeah, no, UK is like everyone is like so here's the breakdown Sophia's mentioned. And by the way, we're past the halfway point, blah blah blah. We can go off topic. So I feel justified. Now, as I was saying, the labor movement in the UK is split on trans rights, whereas the Democratic Party is pretty unified in being for trans rights. Because the Democratic Party is more socially liberal, even if they're not economically liberal, whereas the Labour Party in the UK tends to have some economically liberal aspects and is a bit more of a mixed bag with the social aspects.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree with Trans Gamer Girl. The UK is fucking scary right now.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It just seems like it's obviously only what I'm seeing, but it just seems like the UK has like an overabundance of anti-trans bigots.
Well, not just that, they're anti-trans bigots who are funded by the a lot of conservative movements, which and they are also using anti-trans to help promote a lot of conservative ideas, and the UK seems to be going along with it far too comfortably.
Yeah, that's kind of scary.
Although still in the UK, trans the specifically on whether we should use the proper public spaces is over 70%. So it's not like it's an actual issue. It's just a very drummed issue. Okay, right. Now I'll just stop there. No,
it's a drummed up issue, but I mean, I caught a replay of somebody arguing just that in talking specifically about single occupancy bathrooms, and that having trans people use whichever bathroom is appropriate for them when there's a men's and women's bathroom was unsafe for, particularly they were arguing for children and women.
mm-hmm.
That was unsafe. And we're talking about bathrooms you go in, lock the door, and interact with the porcelain objects of your choice. And then, the single occupancy bathrooms.
One of the things I've been putting in my argument lately is the place I go most frequently to meet up with friends and stuff downtown has two 3-piece, I don't know what you'd call it, 3-piece bathrooms. Neither one is marked. There's a urinal in each and 2 stalls.
Right. They were arguing that if trans people are allowed to go into those kind of bathrooms, if you unmark them, that was making it unsafe.
Yeah, no one's unsafe. They've been open 25 years and never had an incident.
Yeah. However, oftentimes with those arguments, which, by the way, those anti-trans groups also link up with fascists as well. It seems like a lot of attacks on minorities seem to lead their way into those sorts of simplicities.
I think that part of the lure of the fascism is the anti-communism. I think that's how they get hooked up with the far right, is the far right uses anti-communism as one of their rallying points.
Yeah, but like if we're talking about the UK thing, there are people who keep, at the very least, try to claim to be fighting for women's rights, who are very vocally anti-trans, and that seems to be a center point of the issue. And you see some of the people they end up supporting, and it's like there are genuine fascists on the list, like people who think it's are supporting like neo-Nazi rallies type fascists, who support those people, and you're like, it just seems like it's like the alt-right pipeline. It seems like.
Yeah. That's I was saying that you get the strange bedfellows that you get associated with, and then because you have a joint issue, and then it gets all kinds of crazy.
The what I'd recommend, just on video recommendation, obviously I recommend GC's and Cyrus's stuff on fascism, but also the Innuendo Studios, which I'm sure nobody will disagree with me on, the alt-right playbook series, which is amazing.
I think I probably saw that. Probably.
If you didn't, watch it. If
Or
you
did
haven't
I?
watched,
Take the recommendation then.
you haven't watched DC stuff, watch his stuff too, because his stuff is pretty
Yeah.
damn.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of that got demonetized, right? Or no.
Yeah, did it? You've been quiet.
I think we may have. No.
I'm here.
Yeah, we lost his mic for a minute. Sorry from this end.
Well, I mean, it was turned off.
Yeah.
No.
Anyways, Christy, you said something about demonetization.
Demonetization.
Yeah, I was just curious did that stuff get demonetized heavily, or
That kind of politics gets demonetized fairly often. I mean, the algorithm, nobody bids on it.
yeah.
So even if you're monetized, you're not going to be. It's not going to make you any money.
Politics in general often get demonetized.
I mean, fair.
I mean, even if you are monetized, do a monetized video concerning politics, that's one of the down checks. People go, no, I'm not bidding on that. I don't want to buy advertising on things that are political. And so even if you've got ads turned on and you haven't been demonetized, you're not going to ever make it. You're never going to generate capital.
Well, not directly via monetization. Obviously, there are things like Patreon and Ko-fi and other such ways of acquiring some amount of financial capital. But
the algorithm is never going to give you any love. That's
it'll be more similar to like a PBS sort of thing. At least how PBS used to be. I don't know how they are now as much.
If you want to make money, just do something about finance.
If you want to make money, just do something about finance.
As far as videos, yeah.
Yeah, well, videos about the people who want to buy ad space. Or want to buy ad space on things that talk finance.
Or blow up shit.
Wait.
Yeah.
I had a guy that subbed to me when I first started my channel, and that's what his entire channel was about. It was like he'd put stuff in the microwave and watch it blow up.
I mean,
there you go.
I was almost going to say there's nothing wrong with that, but I mean, I suppose
I've been binging one topic at a time recently, so apparently more than half of his stuff gets demonetized because of the LGBT content.
Yeah, if you talk about anything that's LGBT, it will almost like 95% of the time will get demonetized.
It's not a hatred of the LGBTQ community. It's things that have that as a content thing are more likely to speak frankly and openly about sex. And that is, Toyota doesn't want anything to do with that. The advertisers say, we're out.
I mean, but like that's a huge generalization.
Well, no, but that's just something the algorithm has figured out. It's not a generalization that people were making. It's a generalization that the algorithm has figured out.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I buy all if you're a company that puts up your like, yes, we're LGBT friendly, and every time there's a month or a day that celebrates that, then you have some responsibility to make sure that content gets seen. So
yeah, I think you're right about that.
Some do. I mean, Dollar Shave Club of all things,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's a pretty reliable LGBT on sponsoring LGBTQ videos.
Well, even my fascism videos, one of them was age restricted. One of them got a strike and then it got unstruck. So I think they're both demonetized. So.
Oh, what was that video that I feel like I had something that was just like struck that I was doing live, that there's like no like content or nothing like strange about it, and it got struck for some reason.
Yeah,
I still
like,
don't know why.
YouTube system is really bad. It's almost unusable. Like it's for a lot of creators, I think it's just disheartening, right? Like they just stop doing it, because I feel like that a lot of times too, where it's just like I'm sinking all this time into this thing, and is it going to be seen, or is YouTube just going to strike it, or am I going to get some copyright strike that doesn't make sense, or just all kinds of problems. It's just a bad system.
Out of 100 and some videos, I have gotten struck once, and that wasn't a strike. That was you have to share your revenue on this. I'm like, okay, I don't make anything anyway, so fine.
Yeah, that's pretty, like, I get that all the time. That's pretty common. But I've gotten a warning. I got a warning one time for video. So I was doing the fascism video, and at the beginning I had like a montage of like fascists and white supremacists to make the point that they sound a lot like Trump. And I just uploaded the beginning because it was just going to be the intro, and I wanted to get somebody, I think it was maybe Cyrus's eyes on it or whatever, just to let me know if he thought it was good. And I put it on private so nobody else could see it unless they had the link, and I got a strike for that. So yeah, and all the clips that I used in that are all found on YouTube. So I don't know.
That's that intro I got to see, right? Yeah. Okay. I don't get it. It seemed fine to me, but what do I know? I covered a Neil Diamond song. Apparently, that was too much for the algorithm.
Yeah, YouTube's just not. It's not user friendly if you're a creator.
Yeah.
No. But we can't be on Nebula because we're not big enough. Which is all these leftists on Nebula is kind of, I find that amusing because it's a bit gatekeepy. Which is not against Nebula. I actually am paying for
I'm not
it,
familiar with Nebula, I'll be honest.
That's okay. It's a creator-owned site that has about 50, 60 of the bigger creators. But
there's just really there's no site that can compete right now with YouTube, as far as like that's where the eyes are that you want to get. So you're just kind of forced into using YouTube. I mean, really, unless you can go to like BitChute, which is just full of white supremacists, or Vimeo, I think, is another one. And there's there's like a lot. There's one that was actually
Twitch TV.
Twitch. Yeah, but Twitch is kind of different than YouTube. Like it's like YouTube is more catered towards like video essay kind of types.
Joe Rogan recently did that. He switched and went to, I don't remember which.
Spotify.
Twitch, maybe?
Spotify.
Mm-hmm. He just went and moved everything. He's now no longer on YouTube.
Yeah.
Huh.
The world shall weep.
I will miss him.
I won't.
I didn't know that he left YouTube though. I thought
I didn't know that.
See?
Well, I mean, I think he still has the channel. He didn't, fold up his cart and everything. But
yeah, he's still on YouTube. He's still got 10.1 million subscribers on YouTube.
But like that's.
But as I understand
it,
he does clips from what he does on the other thing.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say.
Advertising. Would you like to go there?
Yeah, that's true. It's like, it looks like under 12-minute type. The last one he did that was a full episode was a month ago.
Well, that's what a lot of people do for Twitch. They essentially take clips of the streams on Twitch to play that or whatever as to some degree promotion, or even if not for the Twitch, for the general full stream of something.
And
That's
you know,
not
I
uncommon.
don't know how many millions of dollars he got paid too. Think about that.
It was a lot.
Yeah.
Like 100 mil, I think, or something like that.
Something like that is something where you go, what?
Yeah, $100 million, which will be used to line the pockets and help Joe Rogan's children never have to worry and have boatloads of cash.
Yeah.
While millions of people who could have been helped.
I think
continue
Spotify
to
also
star.
took down some of his content though, like some of the more, like the Stefan Molyneux one. I think they might have taken down some of Alex Jones' episodes. So I mean, maybe it's a good thing that he went to Spotify. I don't know.
As long as he lets Andy Dick, stay in the garage. That
Well, I mean, in 10 years, maybe Godless Cranium will be able to work such a deal.
Yeah. I doubt it.
Well, that is another thing. So capitalism, right? That's another thing, that there's the dream of finally achieving the chance to not have to worry about whether or not you're going to be able to, you and your friends and the people you care about are going to be able to survive. That has to be like a far off dream in a society which is fully capable of providing for everyone, or sorry, that should be at least technologically fully capable of providing everyone the needs for survival. But like it's easier to have far off dreams of like, I mean, I've had them too. Like, what if I could get like $1 million and not have to worry about transitioning and having a home and whatnot while I'm stuck with a few $100s and no consistent income and a fair amount of psychological problems and randomly feel exhaustively sleepy, like as my brain probably is still repairing itself from getting hit by a car 2.5 years ago. And it's just like, fuck, don't remind me about how much I'm happy about my parents being middle class and thinking of going to lawyers to make sure I could get the car insurance money so I could pay for the hospital visit, which they were sending me mail every day for about a year.
Yeah. Well, you know what's kind of funny is I was thinking not too long ago, I was thinking about capitalism and all that, and thinking about why, like, in a world where, like you said, certain countries are technologically advanced enough to be able to look after the needs of its citizens, and don't. And I was playing this game at the time called Moonlighter, and it's basically just capitalism. It's just like you go into a dungeon, you grab like stuff, and then you sell it in your store. And like, it's addictive. Like, you're like selling stuff in your store and you're like, I just want to get that $1 extra or whatever. And it just like, it kind of struck me at that time. I was like, that's why it's so popular, right? Like, people, it's in some way it's addictive.
Well, I mean, it's obviously more addictive if you have the risk of death hanging over your head or homelessness. Mm-hmm. Or just any of your needs just being taken away if you find yourself in the wrong position. But
I mean, I did very well for myself at one point, and by fluke and by whatever social chord I struck. But but when I got sick, that was it. That I'm still. Well, I eventually had to liquidate.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's the thing, right? Is that like it's like, but what if you have a little bit? It's like if you have enough that you're like, maybe you have your own home and you have a job that's pretty steady and you know what you're doing. It's a lot more addictive. Like when I was facing homelessness there for a little while, it wasn't addictive because my that was pretty scary. And so I can imagine what it would be like if like I in a lot of ways I'm kind of lucky because I'm a essential worker, so I'm unlikely to lose my job tomorrow, even with COVID. But my hours might get cut. That's about the most that'll happen. So I mean, in a lot of ways I'm pretty lucky. But like just like if you're above the poverty line, it's kind of like capitalism is a little bit addictive, right? Like because you want to always get more, and you work more hours to get more, and then you buy this thing and you're like, look at this, I got a skidoo or whatever it is.
Well, yeah, and I don't think there's anything necessarily bad about certain aspects of capitalism, because like people utilizing a system like that for things that they want, it seems all right. It just is irksome that so many needs are tied to capitalism. That's in general where
not
I
just
start to
tied
have
to
real issues.
not just tied to, but like you're forced to do what they want in order to gain that thing, right? It's like shelter, for example,
Yeah.
or clean water or whatever it is, right? Like that's like there should be some things that are just not commodified, right?
Well, yeah, but not just that. Like any aspect of things, you have to fight for the ability. So there are aspects of the government that were put into place during the Great Depression that are still technically in place for helping people. However, those things you basically have to fight for, and you have to know what's actually there. You have to know about low-income housing. You have to know about
I see.
food stamps. You have to know about general assistance and what are the things that are required for you to qualify, and what are the things that are required that take away those qualifications. You have to know how to get medical assistance. You have to know
that's one reason things. Why like CERB, for example, was like incredibly helpful during COVID, right? Like in Canada, because they didn't link it to anything. You didn't need to really know anything. You just had to know there's a website, which was they used the unemployment website, right? And you just went there and you just said, look, I'm out of a job, and they just sent you money, right? And they said, we're going to look at when income tax time comes around, we'll make sure that you're on the up and up and you're not just ripping us off, but for now, here's some money, right? So that's one way that the government can be incredibly helpful, is they can just send out money, because that's one of the only things that they're good at.
I mean, here capitalism is the way U.S. capitalism is, at least it was completely unprepared to deal with something like the plague here, and has been. It's not like it's a surprise. Went through that in 1905, 1920. Bubonic plague and Spanish. 1918. Bubonic plague and Spanish flu.
Oh, we've also had SARS.
Yeah,
which was even more recent. So like it's like you said, it's not a thing, but it's also like because they don't. There's no incentive. Like the military is kind of like they stockpile stuff, even though there's no material gain out of it, right? Until later. But like there's no incentive to do masks and stuff from a capital standpoint. Obviously, there is, if you're looking at it from a humanitarian standpoint, as we found out. But they should have been doing what they do for the military and stockpile the common things you need, like ventilators, masks, hand sanitizer, that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean that would have really helped. I mean, it also doesn't help that we have to go through a separate organization to deal with taxes. Like, it's just layers on layers on layers of things.
Of bureaucracy. That's bureaucracy to try to prevent you from accessing the services that you're entitled to.
Yeah. Because most countries, they're sent the information about how much you made by the companies who paid you, and so they know how much you made, so they just do the taxes for you in most countries.
Yeah. Well, also the people that are qualified to help you get those services, like social workers, that would be able to tell you where to get them, are underfunded. So they're overworked, burnt out, not thought of as being, they're usually thought of as, like, I know, for example, that I've had when somebody asks me online and they can't see my face or whatever, or hear my voice, they'll say, what do you do? And if I say, well, I work at social services, they'll be like, oh, you're a woman then, right? So, so it's like devalued work, right? And they're the people that could help you to get the services that you need. It's just a bad system.
Well, I mean,
you're allowed to be a woman with a slightly guy voice. I mean, that's a common thing around here. Yeah,
exactly.
Sorry.
But they just assume that you're a woman, right? Just because you're in social services, and that's just like it would be the same for, like, I had a friend, he was a nurse, and he ran into the same thing, right? Like, they would just assume he was a woman because it's a woman's job, right?
Well, when it comes to what was considered that starts getting into like a whole aspect of gender theory and economic stuff, and how when women move to certain positions, the pay scale of those positions dropped, and the number of ways in which things have just been devalued if it's associated with women.
Well, like that's like the anti-SJW talking point, right? Where they say, well, women just want to do other things. Like, they want to be teachers, they want to be social workers. It's funny how those things are the devalued jobs, though, and that's why they're not making as much money as the males.
Yeah. But, I mean, also other assumptions are made depending on who you're defending. Like, just defending trans women gets women called trans, regardless of how they were born or identify, which is interesting.
I've found myself doing that, actually, which bad. I know better. I have a mistaken online. It's harder, but yeah, to discern those things. So when I had the rest of a sentence ready to go, and it just
that's okay.
I dropped it.
When it comes to a lot of this stuff, I still feel like speaking out is still. I think there are a lot of ways, even doing stuff to try to counteract elements of fascism, elements of a lot of these things get devalued, despite the fact that people only feel capable of doing so much, and people only have so many spoons to deal with in a day for a lot of that sort of it takes real effort to try to make change, and
Yeah.
It's easy to frame it in such a way that's overly intimidating, and I mean, I don't think that helps. Even though, yes, real change needs to be made, but even if that's just checking out a protest or trying to be in a protest, uh, uh, once in a while, or speaking out, or you have the option to defend your friend, your trans friend, or your LGBT friend, and doing something. And but I also realize that it can be scary and intimidating, and people can only do so much on
Only
their
have so
own.
many spoons.
Yeah.
There's, I've been thinking about it and going, with the fascism, I'm not sure how effective that would be in getting people who are in or behind or with the modern American fascism and the fascism movement, which is, Trumpism is basically. And if you convince them that it was fascism, I'm not sure they'd stop.
Yeah, I don't.
If you said pointed out how it is fascism, and they went, "Yep, well, okay, same as fascism."
Well, I mean, things can always be rebranded.
Well, there's still a 20 or 30% of the population there that doesn't have the same outlook on reality as the rest of the nation. So that's still super worrying, right? Like democracy
Yeah.
rests on the ideal that you have to all be wanting to learn the truth, and there's a very large segment of the population that's just like, we don't give a fuck about truth. Well, I'm sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on your
Oh
podcast.
yes.
Oh, yeah,
Well, I
fuck
mean,
yeah.
we named
Okay.
the episode "Fucking Fascism," so if you didn't
Alright.
get a clue there,
Well,
uh,
well, there you go. Like, there's like a big segment of the population that's like, fuck it, we don't need reality. We're just going to make our own reality, and that's not good for democracy. Which I think is why Biden is kind of like, that's right now what he's kind of angling towards, is bringing the two sides together so that they can again kind of mend that rift. But I don't think it's going to work. Like, I'm not sure it's going to work.
I don't think you can negotiate what reality is.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he's going to try. Like, I think that's what his goal is to kind of like bring them back into the fabric of reality,
well, yeah, but I always get the impression that oftentimes with the Democratic Party, especially, optics gets promoted above policy. So, like, it doesn't matter how bad people are suffering, so long they will go for the easiest thing for them, that they consider the easiest to make look good and to be well supported or whatever, by at the very least by their benefactors, but also to a lesser extent by the general people.
Okay. To get into what's the difference between conservative and liberal, or using the term the way it was when I grew up. So sorry.
Yeah, we're not going to deal with all the leftist versus liberal conversation, despite the fact that we could if we wanted to.
We could, and I'm not going to. I'm just so tired of it. That's a whole discussion in itself, because it is a fundamentally different concept. And having grown up with a parent of each, it was I understand where people come from more, which is why I'm more willing to engage, I guess. And I had a super leftist mom and a super right wing, well, actual Nazi stepfather, and again,
Yeah.
bad sitcom.
Yeah. Well, interesting life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's. I mean, obviously, it's not just that, because like, I grew up with socialist parents, and then rebelled against them as a teenager, in terms of going towards libertarian type mentality, and currently I am just left. I don't think about it too much. Just I mean, in terms of end goal, probably socialism, because there isn't really a need for capitalism in the long term. But in the short term, I don't. I oftentimes care a lot more about trying to talk about short term aspects, because socialism to me is a long term goal, not a short term goal. I think there are certain aspects that need to be gotten out of society for there to be a successfully run government that's not going to careen towards fascism like it currently is. I think there's going to need to be genuine improvements in education. I think there needs to be genuine improvements in the well-being of people. Wait, how did we get into the topic? Wait, why did I?
Good question.
But the similarities between conservatism and fascism, and then we started talking about our parental makeup, which my mom and dad were both pretty conservative. So, and my mom, my dad passed away, but my mom is still alive, and she despises Trump. So, even though there are similarities between his rhetoric and sometimes the stupid, shitty stuff she says, so. Yeah, I think they're two distinct things, but like I said before, there's like definitely similarities between the two that fascists can capitalize on, I guess.
I also know die-in-the-wool conservatives who say, fuck no, I'm not stupid. Trump is a fascist. No.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. That also happens, and I think it depends on what sort of. I think to some degree how much they idealize the past is definitely a big factor.
Yeah, but also their racism, right? Like my mom has some racist issues, and so that kind of plays into it. Now she still realizes that the stuff that Trump is saying is super racist, right? But her racism is more like I don't know how to explain it. Like it's more muted, I guess.
It's these are people in these are understandable villains, but they're more like this group of people is more likely to be villains in the story of my in my universe that I interpret in my brain.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of doing it. Like, yeah, like when she tells a story about, like, say, like there's neighbors or whatever, and they played music loud, she'll say something like, those Chinese, how those Chinese people are, or whatever, like whatever group she thinks that they are, and then you'd be like, white people play loud music too.
Yeah.
So
I had the Dropkick Murphys on at 40 on my cars the other night. So
yeah, exactly.
Although I'm not exactly a white people,
but she doesn't like
you're white passing.
I'm white.
Yeah, but saying like we should put them in concentration camps is a bit too far for her, But I don't know. Maybe there's conditions that would be able to convince her that it was good, right? Like, I don't know.
What the term was when Perfict and I were younger. I have no problem with these people, but would you want your sister to marry one?
Yeah.
That level of racism.
Right. Yeah. So it's like, I don't know, like some people call that like they say like they play on their bias or whatever, and I think like bias obviously plays a factor, but I think that goes above bias, right? Like that's going into, you know, outright racism. So I don't know, there's definitely similarities between conservatism and things that they can use, and like I said, it's like fear of the left, right? So like if conservatives are sufficiently scared of the left taking over, then and you know, a lot of times they use communism because it's not just the left but a specific kind, and so they can say like, look at, you know, the USSR, or look at Stalin, or look at Mao or whatever, right? And that's going to happen here, and now you've got them sufficiently scared that they have enough similarities with the right or with the fascists that they'll side with them. And they usually think, well, the fascists that we're siding with, we can control them later on, we won't have to worry about it, where we have more of, there's more of us, but before you know it, you're a fascist, right? So
yeah, and yeah.
You can go.
Oh no, you go. I didn't actually have anything.
You've been
specific
supporting
on
more
my
and more
brain.
fascist things as you court their base.
right. Yeah. And you see that, like, even like I said, like in the anti-SJW movement, right? Like it started out with I think it started out with like Gamergate or whatever. So it's about games and basically women in games. And over time it's grown and grown into, now they complain whenever there's LGBT representation in movies, or you know, all kinds of race issues and stuff like that. So I'm sure that those racist biases and the misogyny was already there, but it's obviously grown, I think, right? Like over time. So
Well,
I'm sure that it does go clunk for them. That when there's an LGBT reference in a movie or a show, that it goes clunk for them, and they go, "Oh, well, now they're propagandizing me," or whatever. But I mean, that has to be counted as also working the other way. I mean, when there's no inclusion, doesn't that count as a clunk for other people?
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just of course thinking Star Trek because I'm a nerd.
Oh, Sorry, I saw a tweet about the Star Trek thing. You go on.
Lauren Chen. No.
Oh, I know. I did. Did she say something else? I get my fascist Canadian Laurens mixed up. Sorry.
Lauren Chen said that there was I think there's a gender fluid character in the new Star Trek, and she's making a face that looks like she smelled a bad fart.
There's a non-binary and a trans man.
Yeah. But she's just yeah, and there's this video thing where it's just like politics in Star Trek. And it's like Star Trek was a socialist society, like right from the start, with interracial relationships, whole thing about the world coming together in like, there's like, it was super far left from the start. Like, what the fuck do you mean politics in Star Trek?
Yeah, but that's again, right? Like with fascism, you don't have to worry about reality, right? Like like she doesn't need to know anything about Star Trek. She'll just talk about how it's now woke and they're gonna go broke, right? Like, and that's all that she needs to do. They do the same thing with everything, right? Like they do it with you know, they either oversimplify it so that you don't have to think about it, and they'll even brag about it. Like I saw, like I think it was Douglas Murray or somebody was saying that you know, that the left over complicates things, and so you can't understand it. And they're like, no, you just oversimplify it to the point where, you know, you just say like, what, you know, privilege doesn't exist because there's this poor white person over here that's homeless, you know, and instead of like looking at what they're actually trying to convey, right?
Well, yeah, but I mean, a lot of that, it is a lot easier to do reactionary thinking which is a particular type of thought process as opposed to the sort of types of thought processes that you do when you do a sort of critical analysis of something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's like harder. It's harder, right? Like it's kind of like evolution, right? Like just saying the Earth is flat and we were put here by a god is a lot easier to understand than the processes of evolution, right? So
sorry. There was a funny meme that actually describes this really well. It was about Santa Claus. And it was essentially like, it's easier to believe that Santa Claus is it's like, some people on one side saying, Santa Claus is real. It's like a very simple, easy to understand explanation. On the other side, it's like parents are making up like this whole person and this whole like series of things going on, all these conspiracies about the government telling you that Santa is real and all that stuff. And it's like just to make it sound really complicated and convoluted, whereas it's much simpler to believe that Santa exists. And I think that describes the difference actually pretty well.
Yeah,
between...
I think it's like funny also when they do like they'll send out saying like this is bread lines in socialism, and it's like from America or something, or they'll do that with like apartment buildings, like look at these apartment buildings in a capitalist country, but they're framing it as being a communist country, right? So
yeah, pretty much.
Like reality just doesn't it doesn't matter, right? Like all that matters is like what team you're on, and
there was
winning, right?
There was a trans man who reversed the before and after pictures on profile just to see what would happen, and got "You'll never be a girl, you look too much like a man," like nonstop down there.
Yeah,
it's because reality, it doesn't matter. I pass in real life like a lot, but I'm open about being trans online, so it's different.
So that being said, we're getting close to the ending time, closing time, and I've got closing time stuck in my head. Perfect. Where can people find you?
The Rumpus Room, which will be listed down below, and every week I'm here.
Yeah.
Try the veal.
Christy, where can people find you? And is there anything you're working on?
Usually in my room, and yes, there is finally, but I still can't talk about it. Normality Quake on Twitter. Chris Abbey music. That's Christy without the TY. And Christy Abbey is my main channel, which will have content soon. Finally, I stopped for a while. Plus, we have LGBTQ rants on Wednesdays, right?
At 4 p.m. Eastern.
At 4 p.m. Eastern. So there's that. Other than that, I really want to go play live again.
Okay, don't worry.
It'll happen. It'll come back.
I'm saving Godless Cranium for last, just cause.
Should I put on like just bedroom shows? That sounded all wrong.
Anyways, I'm Ozma in the Dark. I can be found at ozmainthedark.com, talking to nothing on Twitter. That's like talking to nothing minus the G. I stream World of Warcraft Classic raids every Saturday. I do this on Sunday. I do LGBTQ rants. I will have clips of the progression clear of Naxxramas, and I'm going to be streaming on my Twitch right after the Fluid Voice. If you want to stick by or go around there. And Godless Cranium, where can people find you and what are you working on?
I'm working. Well, you can find me on my YouTube channel, Godless Cranium, on Twitter at Godless Cranium, and I am currently working on. Hopefully, I'll be working on another Cycles of Fascism video with Cirrus in the near future. Right now, I have about 4 or 5 videos that I'm thinking of working on, but I don't know which ones will come out or when. So hopefully I'll have something out this week. I just got my internet back from when I moved and have enough stuff kind of organized that I can get back to working on videos. And oh, by the way, also thank you very much for having me on. It was a lot of fun. I really like going on smaller leftist channels doing streams like this. I did one earlier today and it was really good as well. It's nice to like be able to talk to like-minded people and not the chatty people that I usually get to.
What was the channel you were on? So
I was on Rico Rance's channel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, yeah. Rico Rance is awesome.
Yeah, it was me, Miranda, and Christy, actually.
Oh, my little sister.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, your life matters. Wow.
Voice.
Your mind matters. Your voice matters. That's why I forgot the voice part. Your voice matters. It genuinely does. Your life matters, and you definitely matter, and you should care about yourselves and have a good time. And with that, I will briefly be away before I'm on stream dealing with the fucking Naxxramas must clear the rest of it. So, with that, bye.
Peace.
Oh, I forgot to prep this beforehand as well.